And back onto the continent, Nigeria's central bank raised its benchmark lending rate by 50 basis points to 18% on Tuesday as monetary authorities there try to rein in inflation, which has greatly eroded consumer purchasing power. The central bank's decision came after last week's inflation data showed that prices had risen at an accelerated pace in February, despite the recent cashless policy that was meant to reduce the amount of money in circulation. Inflation went up in January. Central Bank Governor Godwin Emefiele says that members of the Monetary Policy Committee were virtually unanimous in raising rates, citing price and exchange rate pressures and expectations of a removal of a subsidy on petrol prices. All right, then let's bring in Deji Badimosi from Lagos. He's got more data and context to this decision that we're seeing from the markets today. So, Deji, what reactions are you getting to the MPC's decision today, raising rates by 50 basis points?
Well, basically, from what the CBN governor said, the reason for the hike is actually as a result of the fact that petrol subsidy now will be removed before the end of the life of this administration. That's what, of course, the CBN governor said. And he did allude to what's actually happening now in the United States of America as well and globally. But he said the most important reason is, of course, because of the anticipated removal of petrol subsidy. Of course, as you're aware, the government has said that it is going to remove petrol subsidy, but initially the government said it's June. But it's quite surprising that the CBN governor said that the removal of petrol subsidy may happen before the end of the life of this administration. So sometime around May. The end of the life of this administration is on May 29. So we wait to see if the government will move back the removal of the subsidy now to sometime in May before it leaves office. But from what the CBN governor said today, it's like that is what the government plans to do. Of course, inflation too, as you know, it's still very high. And so it's one of the reasons that the Apex Bank now decided to hike, of course, the rate. Inflation currently trending at over 21%. So that's obviously very high. So that's just the reason the CBN governor gave, especially, as I said, the issue of the removal of petrol subsidy.
All right, then. So to what extent, if at all, did this botched demonetization exercise factor in to the rate decision that we're seeing today?
Well, a lot of people expected that the CBN governor was going to say something about that, but obviously he didn't say anything about it. As I said, the biggest reason or the basic reason he gave was the removal of petrol subsidy. But of course, we do know that the demonetization policy, of course, as controversial as it is, would obviously have some kind of bearing now in the decision, because we know that it's also the reason why inflation is currently trending high. But that decision, of course, is made in politics. I'm talking about the demonetization policy now. It's something that the central bank governor tried as much as possible to avoid during the briefing. So basically saying that the removal of petrol, the anticipated removal of petrol subsidy now, is essentially the reason why the bank decided to act. By increasing the rate now by 50 basis points.
Indeed. One last question for you, Deji. The spokesperson for the president-elect, Bayo Onanuga, he's also called for the CBN governor to be fired, given, of course, just how badly that demonetization exercise did happen. But legally, what would the path to firing the CBN governor be like?
Now, to remove the CBN governor, of course, would require the approval of the Senate. Of course, the president actually appoints the CBN governor, but then the president can only do so with the approval of the Senate. So to appoint the governor, you need a two-third majority now in the Senate to approve his, confirm his appointment. And to remove him too would require two-thirds majority in the Senate before the president can sack him. But that's what the CBN Act actually states. But we have seen in this country where a CBN governor was fired without, I mean, the president fired the CBN governor without recourse to the Senate. It happened in 2014 now, sometime in February 2014. And the CBN governor at the time was Lamido Sanusi Lamido, who at that time made an allegation, alleged that 20 billion naira in oil revenue now was missing. Eventually, it was found out that that claim was not substantiated. And so the president basically fired him without actually making any recourse to the Senate. I think that's what Bayo Nanuga probably has in mind. He's looking at that if a president of this country had done it in the past, because there's a precedent, he obviously thinks that this CBN governor can actually be fired now in the same manner. But the truth is that, going by the CBN's Act, the president cannot unilaterally fire the CBN governor without making recourse to the Senate. But, it has happened before. There is a possibility that it can happen again. Another president might just decide to follow the action of the previous president and do it. But going by the Act, going by the CBN Act, the president cannot unilaterally fire the CBN governor.